Welcome. We should be having people come into the session. I'm not seeing a participant count yet. Yeah, there it's going. There we go. So yeah, we know it takes a few minutes to get folks on board. I'm Steve Isaacs at the University of Kentucky, and I think we're in for a treat today. We have a really good speaker. This is the second in our professional development series on farm succession that's funded by the SARE Sustainable Education Network. I suspect I haven't looked at the participant list. I suspect many of you are back from this first session that we had with Dr. Becky Smith on heirs property. Today's session is going to be with David Marrison with Ohio State Extension. David is a field specialist in the Ohio State system, and he's also the interim director of the Farm Policy or Farm Financial Management and Policy Institute. Yeah, you're right, David. That is a mouthful. That's a new program that Ohio State's got kicked off, and David is the interim director of that. Also, I suspect there are some of you who are subscribers to the Ohio Ag Manager. David Marrison is the co-leader of that with Chris Zoller, and I have known David for a number of years. We've done some of this farm succession planning work before. We've had David down several times in the past to do some face-to-face sessions, and I'm really glad to have him on board for this session today. He just does an excellent job on some of these things that, as far as I'm concerned, and I know Nicole would agree with this, some of the hardest things that we do in succession planning is get folks to communicate well. So we're going to let him get started here in just a moment. Brett has just posted a link for the evaluation. We'll remind you of that again at the end. And we will be monitoring the chat room. So drop questions in there. And I think at one point, perhaps David is even going to ask you folks to give a response in the chat. If you have any questions that are coming in or clarifications, we'll monitor that. And we'll break in if we need to, but otherwise we'll keep some questions toward the end and save some time. So this is series 2 with David Marrison on communication. Remind you that on March 3rd, Kevin Ferguson, an area farm management specialist from Tennessee, will be covering some things on sort of transitioning the business part of our farms. And on March 24th, Dr. David Cole, internationally known speaker who just does a great job taking a bigger picture look. And then our final session on April 14th, Clint Quarles and I will come back in and sort of maybe try to dot some I's and cross some T's and see where we go from there. Again, thank you very much. Brett or Nicole, unless you have something you need to flip on a mic and weigh in, I'm going to turn it over to David Marrison. And David, thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate being here today and to share some thoughts with you on communication and farm succession planning. Wanted to first give a little bit of background. Steve gave some information, but just kind of visually so you can see where in Ohio I'm from. Upper left-hand corner there is the family farm, the dairy farm family that I grew up on in Ashtabula County, so all the way up in Northeast Ohio, clear up on the Pennsylvania border, bordering Lake Erie. And that is where my interest in farm succession and I would say family dysfunctionality and communication started. And then in the middle of the screen, you can see there a county named Coshocton County, and that's where I moved 4 years ago, and that's where I currently live in Coshocton County in East Central Ohio. Grew up on a dairy farm. You can see I was doing an E. coli test there in the one picture. But here in Coshocton County, our family raises a meat goat. So we have a small meat goat herd, and we market those here in the region. And my academic training has been from Ohio State University as well as Purdue University. So I refer to myself as a Boylan Buckeye. So the objectives of our short time together is first to identify some common communication issues which can impact farm succession. So as you're working with farm families in their farm succession work, maybe you can identify and help them identify some of those communication issues. And then secondly, provide some strategies to improve your family's communication skills. And I give a shout out to my wife. My wife and I, she works for OSU Extension as a family consumer science educator for our system. She and I do a lot of our family communication workshops together because we have plenty of time to work on those in our home environment. So we've been teaching together in this area, and I'd like to just give her an acknowledgement for some of the material here. Definitely is for some of the things that we've worked together on. Now, I know you'll be talking a lot about farm succession and estate planning, and I have to think about the elephants in the room often are some of the things that might slow down farm succession planning, estate planning as we plan for the future. So one day I was just trying to brainstorm all those different words that come to my mind when we think about farm succession planning, and I put it in a little word art, and you can see everything from the estate and farm succession, of course, but then looking at words like dysfunctionality and communication and conflict and goal setting, heirs, wills, fair versus equal, prenuptial, in-law, sweat equity, all those things bubble to the surface. And I put them in the form of an elephant just because how do we learn how to become better communicators? How do we learn how to put a farm succession plan together and work with families in that? It's really like, how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time, and just taking those topics. And today we're going to take a little bite at this family communication and farm succession type of topic. But what I will tell you, I am a product of all of my communication mistakes that I've made through the years. And the one thing I've learned through my work here with Ohio State is that every farm family, especially those that work in the family business, every family, some ways we have dysfunctionality in our communication. And I would think I'd like to start off about, the communication's tough. So set the stage. I'd like to show you this clip. It's not about the nail. So if we'll sit back and we'll watch this for a couple minutes, and I hope you enjoy this way to kick off this presentation.
It's just, there's all this pressure, And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me, and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless. And I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
Yeah, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See, you're
out.
not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just... Sometimes it's like... There's this... achy... I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. All of them.
Yeah, that sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. If you would just...
Don't...
Try to see things my way. Do I have to keep on talking till I can go on? We can work it out. We can work it out.
So I hope you enjoyed that quick clip, and that's kind of where we'll go through today, talking about the nail in our own head as far as family communication and in the farm setting. So I'd like to start out with a chat, and I got my little chat birds there. If you could, just for a second here, if you could open up your chat box and drop in your response to this question: what can keep us from communicating about the future of our farm? So if you open up your chat, I'm going to open up my chat so I can see it. What are some things that you think will keep farm families from communicating about the future?
Brett, check and see if we have a chat enabled, because I'm not seeing anything pop up yet. There we go.
Okay,
Yeah,
fear.
they're starting.
We had to get them. They were thinking their responses. Fear of talking about death. Beautiful. Do not want to talk about death. So we got 2 of those right away. Fear of arguments. Wonderful. Give just a second. Perceptions, the patriarchal nature, the parental role. Thank you. Any other thoughts? Disputes, so that disputes and discomforts on who the farm is being left to, not knowing how to divide between big families, want to be fair or won't be fair. Thank you, Thomas. You're dropping some good things in there. Right. And some want to sell, others want maybe want to sell the farm. So, and that's really what I appreciate your chat comment. I'm going to minimize that and then go through. So some of the barriers and what keeps us from communicating about the future of a farm. So I'd like to start out today talking about some of those barriers, so we know what those barriers are, and then provide you with some strategies on then how to overcome some of the barriers. So right off, uncomfortable topic to discuss, and I know that that was mentioned right away as far as a barrier, and talking about mortality definitely is not easy. It's difficult for children to talk about their parents' mortality as well, because maybe you don't want to maybe you don't want to appear insensitive. So these conversations are very difficult to talk about. And then the second one I put on my list, and I think all the things that you mentioned, we're going to see here in the next couple of slides, but the outside stressors, the things that stress us in our lives, tend to play into preventing us to have conversations. So as I've been traveling around asking farm families about typical farm stressors, some of the stressors that might emerge from farm families is, number one, that we live and work together 24 hours a day. You know, I can go to work and not be around my family, my brothers, my sisters, but in a farm environment, a lot of times we are living and working. Not only do we work together, but we may have a house that is right down the road from our brother or sister-in-law, brother-in-law. So just that environment of working together 24 hours a day. Fact that business takes priority over family, and that the old adage when I grew up was, we make hay when the sun shines. So does the good weather and the planting season, the calving season that we might be getting into, the kidding season for us, of course, here in a couple weeks is really going to be front and center. But taking the time for the business over family, and what impact does that have when maybe a husband or wife can't make it to a sporting event that their kids might have at school because of something that's happening on the farm. And then stress of handling business and personal finances. A lot of times we commingle our finances. We don't recommend that, of course, but we recommend that you have separate accounts. But when you look at business and personal finances, in those years that net farm income is down, that will translate into our personal finances being lower. And then just the stress of not having as much money in the family for family living expenses or for vacations and other things could cause stress. The in-law relationships, I think some would call this the outlaw relationships, but just those relationships when we bring in through marriage different relationships. Our family, our core family, of course, we've grown up around each other. Brothers grow up around each other. But what changes in the dynamics of communications when those brothers that are working on the farm together then both are married and have a spouse, and how does that change their communication patterns? Differing time commitments. This was a struggle that my family, my uncle and my dad struggled with the fact that one of them was a very morning person and would get up and work hard in the morning, but would want to leave earlier in the afternoon and evening to leave the farm to go home, where the other brother was the complete opposite. And in some farms, this is a really, really good thing that there's differing time commitments, especially like a dairy farm like we had. However, it may become a competition of who's working longer, who's working harder, and those different time commitments. And then receiving criticism from the family in that span of being a dad and a son, a dad and a daughter that might be working together on the farm, and you're supposed to be business partners. But how do you take criticism from your dad, from your brother, from maybe your father-in-law, whatever it may be, and receiving that criticism? Hopefully it's constructive criticism, but how do you handle that criticism that would come in that working environment? And next, with feeling like hired labor. For some, it's about, am I a manager, a future manager of this business, or literally am I just cheap labor for mom and dad on this farm. And then the next would be about the whole question of sweat equity. And I know in our farm succession workshops, talking about that value, that unpaid labor that happens on many of our farms with the promise that someday this farm is going to be yours, but we're going to pay you less right now. And then how does that conversation with sweat equity, whether it's realized or not realized in the future, what kind of communication issues will arise in the family because of those sweat equity issues? And then I have the whole list of unexpected things. And we know that stress is heightened when things go wrong that are out of our control. So this could be death. This could be discord, could be disagreements, could be the stress of a second marriage, a divorce, disability, long-term care. Maybe it's when we get close to retirement years, we don't realize that our Social Security is not going to fund us in a lifestyle that we were anticipating when we retire. So that could cause stress. Maybe one day your brother comes in out of the blue and says, I would like you to buy me out of this partnership. I'm ready to retire. Or maybe there's an unexpected lawsuit. Something happened as we were traveling down the road with a tractor and a lawsuit emerges, and the kind of stress that might occur from that. And then it used to be a throwaway topic when we were doing these presentations, talking about global issues, about how could global issues create a stress in the family that then in turn could stress our communication patterns. But you think about the global issues and how they've impacted our farms. You start a few years back with the trade issues that we had with China, and then that rolled into a global pandemic, which then translated into the Russia and Ukraine conflict, and how those world events, those global issues, how they impacted us at the farm level. And so those unexpected things can cause some stress in our families. So we talked about uncomfortable topics to discuss, the outside stressors that will be there. Another thing about prevents us from communicating well is we just don't have enough time. And for farm families are very, very busy, especially in a production cycle. We're busy doing the things that we need to do to raise the livestock, raise the commodities that are raising. And it's these discussions that we have with farm succession, with estate planning, they all seem to get just shoved down the to-do list. So we just don't have enough time. And this was mentioned in the chat about may cause family conflict. So we're having these discussions, and then that might step us into a conflict because of maybe how a decision is going to be made for the future. Maybe it's how we interpersonally react with one another, but could cause some family conflict. And farmers are not. We talk about family communication. I think there's two people that my dad wanted to see maybe on a weekly basis, and that was a milk truck driver that pulled in every other day, and Larry Burt, who was coming to breed the cows artificially. So my dad was not known for the communication. Many of our farmers are not known for their communication skills. So when it comes to having what I would call crucial conversations about your estate plan and succession planning, we may not have the tools in the toolbox that we need to be effective communicators. Or maybe we don't know what or how to do. And this is where we turn to our professionals, right? And this is the professionals that are across the state of Kentucky through Extension and other organizations that can help farmers to help answer their questions when it comes to succession planning, the process of putting a plan in place to develop our next manager. We have our ag attorneys that are there that know how to use business arrangements, business structure, that are able to use items like wills and trust and other mechanisms to be able to transfer that farm to the next generation. So, but maybe that barrier is that we just don't know what to do, so we don't talk about it. Since we don't want to look like we don't know what we're doing, we'll choose not to talk about it. And then next, we don't agree on what should happen. So what happens when mom and dad, they don't agree with what should happen with the estate in the future, and we have differing opinions? So does that stonewall the conversation where one spouse just looks and says, you know what, I'm just going to plan on outliving my spouse, and then I get to do whatever I want to do with the estate plan. Maybe we don't agree on what should happen between generations. Maybe mom and dad and son or daughter who is involved with the farm, they don't agree on what should be done with our estate plan or transition plan. And then I think all of us taking the time to recognize the elephants, or some people would refer to these as the undiscussables, and they would use it as bulls. But what are the things in the family that we don't want to talk about? We don't want to talk about the future of the farm because maybe I don't trust my daughter or son-in-law, and I'm concerned about what happens to the farm after I'm gone. Could something happen? Could a divorce happen that would impact the farm in the future? Maybe we're concerned that we don't want to talk about the future because there's a hurt or a hang up that is out there in our family that we don't want to address, a critical issue with a hurt, hang up, or a habit that probably needs some attention. So what are those things in your family that are undiscussable, or what are those elephants that are in the room? And then some other barriers that we think about, the mixed role. I'm kind of made mention to this already about that, the parental role. So think about dad with a son, they're in the farming operation together, they're that mixed role. Now, we understand that as children, we are taught to obey thy parent, obey and honor thy parent. So what happens when you're in a 50-50 role? Which hat do you have on? Do you have your dad hat on, or do you have your business partner hat on? And what happens when dad and son are farming as 50-50 partners, but they don't agree on a solution to a problem? So whose solution rises to the top? Is it the solution that we look at critically and we figure out the best ways to solve the problem? Or does it always fall back that dad gets to make the decision because he's in the dad role? And then we have this thing called farm languages. And you think about, I know in our farming operation, we will refer to tracts of land, farms that we farm in our operation, not based on who owns those farms now, but who owned those farms 3 generations ago. You think about when you bring in a spouse, a new in-law, and you're talking about all the things through history that the family just knows. How confusing that can be to that new in-law that is sitting around the table and trying to understand the family business and the family dynamics, and you're talking about all these farm languages. I can remember my first wife, who is now passed on. We moved out onto the farm right at the beginning of our marriage, and she did not understand any farm language. She grew up in the city and didn't have much contact with agriculture. And then she moves out in the middle of the country on a working dairy farm. We lived physically right there on the farm in my grandfather's house. And I have to tell you, the first time that I said, Larry Burt is here to breed the cow, and let me say that again so you can kind of resonate with you. Larry Burt is here to breed the cow. She had no clue what AI meant. She didn't know what the process meant. She just thought it was weird that a man was showing up to breed the cow. So AI to most folks, when we talk about AI is artificial intelligence, not artificial insemination. So how do you teach the farm language to that person that comes into the family and doesn't have knowledge of all the things that we talk about? And in the university system and in the business world, we have our acronyms as well. So how can we help people understand those things? And then, of course, personality differences, the personality differences that we all have. And this is helping farm families understand how we are as people with those personalities. And I know through academia, we probably could, as we were at programs, I could say, oh, that's an orange green person, or that is a gold green person, or oh, that's an ISFJ, whether it's the colors personality testing, whether it's the Myers-Briggs, whether it's the DISC assessment, and about the knowing the differences between our personalities and how we function. So some of the communication barriers can completely be drawn right back to the simplest sense, just the differences in our personalities and the personalities of people that are working on the farm. So are there opportunities that we can help teach those? And I know our Women in Ag programs and some other programs are really good about identifying those personalities, but how do we as professionals then help them understand the personality differences, and then how that in turn affects our communication patterns? Of course, we know here's a course all on itself, generation differences, right? The differences between how generations talk, how we communicate, how we best want information provided to us. Some generations, I might say, send me an email or with a PDF. For my mom, it may be that, could you just print that off and put it in the mail to me so that I could read it and I could read it through? Other generations might say, hey, do you have a 5-minute podcast on this that I could watch? Do you have some type of, you joked about, is there a TikTok video that I go to understand what this one lingo is, or where can I find this information? We may be accessing information and wanting that information provided to us in different communication channels. And of course, gender differences, differences between men and women and how we operate. I have a resource in the slide at the end to talk about, but could it be just as simple of just the differences between men and women and how we think, how we communicate? There's a great book called Men Are Like Waffles and Women Are Like Spaghetti, which is a really insightful look on some gender differences that might happen between us as genders, males and female. Or could it be something completely else that's in a farm family that is disrupting their communication patterns? And then are they taking the time as a farm family to have a thoughtful discussion or a thought process of saying, can we properly identify the things that are holding us up in our communication patterns? And maybe it's clearly identifying what those stressors are. So as we start to get into I always think of myself a little bit as a Dear Abby, and I might be pigeonholing my generation here, but I grew up in the days of picking up the paper and reading the Dear Abby column in the paper. And sometimes I feel like that would, as a Dear extension, this could be Dear UK extension, this could be Dear OSU extension. Can you help me with these issues? And a lot of times us as extension professionals or other professionals like crop consultants and other folks, lawyers, accountants, financial folks that might be going out the farm, sometimes I feel like sometimes we are a trusted person, which means and they're going to open up their hearts to us and they're going to ask us some of these questions. And it might be a question like this: my mom and dad won't talk about the future. They keep saying, don't worry about this, kid. This is all going to be yours someday. And that's where the conversation ends. So as a young person, how do I start that conversation? Well, understand that communication is difficult. And I think as I drive around our community, I see that communication, whether it's in agriculture or in other businesses, is really difficult. Just ask McDonald's, right? This McDonald's, I think they were trying to communicate something completely different than try our new crap. Or maybe this church could have found a different way to communicate about how they could help. Don't let worries kill you. Let the church help. I think maybe a well-placed comma would be appropriate there. Or maybe you've seen this ad in the paper: dog for sale, will eat anything, especially like small children. Just give us a call at 888-9999. Or what do you do when you're on this road? You want to stop in, always open, but they're closed. Or you want to turn left, but you're not allowed to turn left. Or this one is great because it was only about 20 miles from my hometown. Which side of the street would you like to drive on? And what is Ohio transportation? What are they trying to communicate? Is it really 10 miles an hour faster to be in the left lane than the right lane? So when we talk about communication and navigating, I'm going to step into navigating crucial conversations, but just taking a quick peek about communication. I think it's pretty clear that most of us will only share about 90% of what needs to be said. But the most crucial probably is what we don't say, that last 10%. And are we taking time to look at those things that might be causing communication issues? I really appreciate this chart by John Powell, Why I Am Afraid to Tell You Who I Am. And because it starts to stagger those communication conversations in different levels. And I think if we look at level 1 and 2, I think in the agricultural world, our farmers and our ag clients, they work really, really good. In fact, probably all of us, let's face it, really work good in cliche conversations and reporting facts. I think before we got online here, Steve and I were just talking about the weather and maybe one snow event there in Kentucky. Those cliche conversations, we start a conversation with every farmer probably about the weather, and might just make some quick comments, cliche, about the weather. If we have maybe a little deeper conversation with them, we'll get into reporting facts. So we could be saying, yeah, the coldest we were here was -5 below there around Christmas time. Or maybe this is when you're talking about, hey, how did the yields go? In a level 1 conversation, oh, we had great yields this year on our corn and soybeans. But as we get to level 2 and we have maybe a little bit more trust, then maybe the farmer would say, yeah, we averaged 180 bushels across the board on corn this year. And I felt really good about that based on our weather patterns. But then start to look at level 3. Look at level 4 and then level 5. As we get into level 3, that's where we start to share ideas and judgments. And that's where risk begins, because you're attaching yourself as you're communicating your ideas, maybe your judgment, you're adding facts to that. I mentioned that I think it was easier in my lifetime maybe to have ideas and judgments maybe 20 or 30 years ago. Now it seems like, especially with all our social media platforms, it's so easy for people to give a negative reaction to our ideas and judgments. And then you look at levels 4 and 5, and this is where in the communication realm that we would try to, maybe this would be our goal, to think about, can we express our feelings and emotions to those around us in our farm families, where we can actually be honest about our feelings and emotions. I remember long ago, one of my friends from college asked me my opinion on the young lady that he was setting to propose to. And I remember him asking, well, how do you feel? Do you think we're going to make a good couple? And I remember at that time that maybe we didn't have a level of trust at that time for me to completely tell him what I thought, my feelings and emotions, my ideas and judgments, even on this young lady that he was set to marry. And I wish I would have been more honest in hindsight, that we would have had a relationship that we would have been a little bit more honest. Would have been able to give him more honest and feedback. And then level 5, open communication, total honesty. And I would venture to say that many of us, it's difficult to have 1 or 2 people in our lives that we can have complete open communication with, total honesty, mutual understanding, where we can lay it out on the table. When I think of some of the best teams, an extension that I've worked with, those that I cherish the most are those ones that after we're done teaching a session, that we could debrief and we could give constructive feedback for improving that session for the future and look at what we did good, what we did bad. Think about that in a farm situation. Is there open communication within the structure of the farm family, whether that's from the senior generation to the intermediate generation, the junior generation? As they're talking, is there an environment where there's open communication, where they can give all of their ideas and express their feelings on a different matter that might be happening at the farm? Or is some of that, is it being shut down? So let's talk about a little bit about these navigating difficult conversations, or helping to empower our farm clientele to be better communicators. So I want you to just take a second here, and I just want you to pause, and I want you can close your eyes, but imagine the most peaceful place that you've ever been. Or if you're a person who likes to keep your eyes open, write it down on a piece of paper, but imagine the most peaceful place that you've ever been in this world. Now, I want you to notice how you feel. So what are you thinking about? Do you feel your heart rate just coming down a little bit? Some of you might be smiling, right? So think about the most peaceful and get that vision in your mind. That's where we want some of our, hopefully all of our conversations to be at the farm level. But now let's take the flip side to this. Imagine a conversation. So again, you can close your eyes, but imagine a conversation you've had in the past where things did not go as you hoped. You know, the conversation might not have started out difficult, right? But somewhere along the way, there were some strong emotions, maybe some differing opinions, and then the conversation started to turn a little crucial. So think about how the other person acted. Think about their words. Think about their voice. Think about their body language. Now, imagine yourself in this conversation that you had that maybe didn't go the way that you wanted. What kind of words were coming out of your mouth? How was the tone of your voice? Or maybe you felt paralyzed to say that the things that you really wanted to say, but you couldn't. And how did you feel physically? How was your heart rate? How was the hair on the back of your neck when you got into that crucial conversation? So I would hope that as you're thinking about the most peaceful place, and then a conversation that went, we would say was a conversation that went south, a conversation that didn't go well, what is the stark differences between those? And this is kind of coming back to that nail in the head thought process. So the nail in the head is really about not giving us strategies to improve other people's communication skills. Yes, we want to help people as they work to develop their communication skills. We want to help to gain strategies to help you control your emotions and then give you the empowerment or give your clients that you're working with to allow them to react in a constructive way to other people's emotions during the crucial conversations. Now, you'll notice there a book, Crucial Conversation Tools for Talking When the Stakes Are High. Now, I will tell you that I've had some severe communication issues in my family, farm family, through life, just a lot of things that have happened. So this Crucial Conversations book was written in 2002, and I'm always looking for ways to improve my abilities to communicate and also negotiate some of those difficult conversations. Now, just this past year, I was able to go through a 3-day training, the official training on crucial conversations this past year. My wife completed this course back in 2005, but it's something that I've been reading. I think I read the book maybe 10 years ago, and there is a lot of information in here. In fact, when you go to a 3-day course, it's 3 days of just insightful how do you deal with crucial conversations. So I'm cramming, giving you a crash course on some of the thoughts that we learned in those crucial conversations trainings. So I'm just going to give you a little maybe of an introductory to crucial conversations. But again, if you're looking to build capacity of how to help people navigate difficult conversations, this is a great book, great training to go through. So think about those peaceful conversations, right? It probably look like something pretty similar to what you see on your screen. Now, when you thought about that conversation that maybe didn't go the way that you wanted, it then might start to look like this, right? On those rapids, or maybe this is not you. Maybe this is the conversation that you thought about these waters. And sometimes with my family, I feel like I'm the guy in the back. I know he's steering the conversation. You could look, is he really steering the conversation there, that difficult conversation, or is he ready to jump out off of that boat? So we think about crucial conversations. There's 3 ways we can handle them. We can avoid them. We can face them and handle them poorly. We can face them and handle them well. And what are some of those ways that we can do? Because our hope is that we're helping families to face these conversations and handle them well. So as we're looking at this, what strategies can we use? Well, I'd like to put 3 visuals in your mind about the heart, the eyes, and the hands. So the heart, learning to look, and then ultimately the hands, making it safe. So the dialogue is, and you'll see the little blue box or blue circle on the right. Dialogue is the free flow of meaning, the free flowing of shared meaning between 2 or more people. So do these two farms family situations sound like there's a lot of free flow of information or dialogue? We tried having a family meeting once, but everyone got mad and stormed out. It took 2 weeks before my uncles would speak again. Every time I try to talk to my parents or my spouse or my siblings, they just ignore me and say there is plenty of time to worry about that in the future. So the crucial conversations matrix that you can keep in your mind is this pool of shared meetings. So that it was where there is comfortable conversations, free flowing between two or more people. And that's the space that we hope I think we all even in our day jobs and the jobs that we do, we would like to have those conversations to be done in a manner that are not threatening, that doesn't cause people to react in unkind ways. When you look at the pool of shared meaning, that is our goal for each of these crucial conversations, to put in the back of our mind, how do we stay in the pool of shared meaning? And then you can see the ring around that. That's where some of the safety alarms start to go off. And then you'll notice to the top of the circle, the silence. We're going to talk a little bit more about withdrawing, avoiding, and masking. And then the bottom is the violence part of the circle. So when there's a crucial conversation that occurs, you think about the conversation that you were thinking about. Okay, things were okay in the beginning, and then they started to go wrong. So when they start to go wrong, we start to walk out of that circle in the middle to the safety ring, and then it could escalate to where we go silent or violent. So what does that mean? So silence, purposely withholding information from the dialogue. So it's used often to avoid creating a problem. It restricts the flow of meaning back into that shared pool. So it's any information that is withheld. So think about those words that you saw on the previous slide, the masking. So this is understating or maybe not sharing everything that you think about that conversation. So that could come across as sarcasm. It could come across as sugarcoating or couching. It may say, don't worry about this. Think about this as a parent, maybe don't worry about this. It's all going to be yours someday. So we don't need to talk about it. The avoiding, this is where you just don't address the real issue. You change the subject or you shift the focus to something completely different. Or withdrawing, I'm not going to be engaged in this conversation. I'm just checking out of it. I'm going to exit the conversation. I'm going to exit the room. I'm going to exit the farm shop, wherever it may be. So that's on the top side of the circle. Again, but it's a circle, so it keeps moving around. Could be different for each situation. Or is it the side of violence? That's the controlling, the convincing or compelling others to your viewpoint. So instead of keeping information out of the pool of shared meaning, it's actually forcing meaning into it. I really don't know if I like the word violent, but this violence, it's about how do you manipulate to force meaning back into the conversation. So it could be controlling, where you're forcing others to think your way. Maybe you cut people off or overstate your facts, speak in absolutes, or you just dominate the conversation. Or maybe it's labeling, stereotyping, or you categorize people. It could be name calling. And then attacking that's the stage where people just give up on convincing, and then they use some type of punishment for the other people. I remember a family in West Virginia that I was working with, and when they had crucial conversations, the two brothers, they didn't stop talking to each other. That wasn't a problem. When they got into a struggle, they literally got in a struggle. They got into a fist fight over it. So think about these situations, silent and violent. I really want to be prepared to manage the farm in the future. But every time I try to talk to my parents about the farm financials, mom says there's plenty of time to worry about that. So again, that would be avoiding, right? So that would be silent. You're changing the subject. Or what about the next one? We tried having a family meeting, but everyone got mad and stormed out. Real life happened in our family with an LLC meeting. So withdrawing, not engaging in the conversation any longer. I'm just going to exit it completely. All right, maybe the one I started. So that would be a form of silent, the withdrawing. I started to talk about the future of the farm with my dad. but stopped because he yelled, "Don't you trust me?" And then he started to throw tools around the shop. You know, with people that are more prone to go violent, they will start to physically maybe slam doors, throw tools in the shop, you name it. That is more of the attacking stage, where they just start to throw things. And then part of my dad says lawyers are crooked. So this is labeling, right? My dad says lawyers are crooked and politicians are going to take the farm through taxes. So I don't want to even talk about the future. So there's the stereotyping, or they're categorizing people. It could be name calling, belittling, threatening, whatever it may be. So you have these couple reactions. So I want to think, have you pause and think about that. So when you get into crucial conversations, which way do you go? I would tell you, in my family, we have family members that have not spoken since 1996 because of a farm succession problem. So you can guess they're not violent, they are silent. If they have not spoken since 1996, they're completely avoiding that conversation that needs to happen. Or are you the type of person that when the conversation goes bad, you start to see yourself raising up and starting to raise your voice and to be more demonstrative in your actions? So some strategies. Start with the heart. The first thing that degrades during a crucial conversation is not our behavior, but it's our motive. So really, what is it that you really want as a result of this conversation? But part of this is thinking about what happens to your body. So this goes back to the old fight or flight reaction that is innately in all of us, right? Of how do you react in conversations that might turn uncomfortable? You think about those things. Adrenaline starts to pump in your bloodstream because it's fight and flight, right? The large muscles of the arms and your legs, they get more blood. We're ready to run. And when this happens, your brain's diverting that blood from activities it deems non-essential to take on this high priority task, such as hitting or running. So what really happens is you're pulling blood away from your brain. And just think about the times when you said, "Man, why did I say that?" Well, you said that because your brain was not fully engaged because the blood was in other parts of your body. So you didn't have time to process it rationally through your brain before it came out of your mouth. So think about your body in these crucial conversations. Think of how you're reacting, and we'll step through that. But what do you really want from this conversation? And when we start to see ourselves getting into this crucial conversation time, how can we present our brains with a question? In other words, send that question. What do I really want from here? Because when you send yourself back a question, what I want as a result of this conversation, it's going to send blood back to our brain that then will help us get out of that fight or flight mentality and get us back into a process where we're starting to think. So look for those signs. Think about the signs that we should be watching for. So we've talked about the heart, but now look at the signs with the eyes, the emotions. You might show up as anger, resentment, or hurt. What are the emotions that are going on within you? And then do you notice any of the signs that might come physically? So you might get tightness to your shoulders or your neck. There might be a tightness of your chest. If it's a fear that's showing up in your system, it might be that you get like a tightness in your stomach. And then think about your physical responses. The heart rate increases. So I remember a buddy that I had in college, you could tell when he was going to go violent and get aggressive because the veins in his neck and in his forehead started to pop out. So does your face get flushed? Does your voice get louder? Do you get sweaty hands? Do you get dry mouth? Do your eyes start to water? What are your physical responses? Because part of these crucial conversations is learning how you control and bring back your body and bring back your emotions. And then what's your typical response on behavior? Are you the type of person where you're gonna start out more and add more sarcastic terms to the conversation? Or are you the type of person where I'm just gonna start to avoid here and I'm just gonna walk out of the room and go into the kitchen or into the milk house? Are you the type of person that you start to raise your voice and you start to point your finger at others? So learning about yourself so that you can recognize the emotions, the physical responses, and maybe the behaviors of those around you. And here's a new concept that I'd like you to think about. Well, maybe these crucial conversations are all about fear. A lot of times we think about others and we think, well, they're out to get me. Well, no, we don't even have a clue what is going on in their body and their mind. When we look about these crucial conversations, it could be literally that we are fearful of something. And that fearful usually is that we're fearful of our ideas not being respected, or we feel and believe that our feelings cannot be expressed. So think about, as another person, as you're in a crucial conversation with somebody else, could you be thinking about, I wonder what is in their fear bucket on this? I wonder, are they afraid of their idea? Are they afraid of their feelings? What are some things that might be going on for them? And be thinking about that for yourself. But where's some of the resistance coming from? Head issues. You notice the first two are I statements. I need to find understanding. So where's the resistance when it comes to crucial conversations that people might not want to talk? It could be because I don't have all the answers and I need more information. In extension, this is our role, right? To help people learn so that they could have more head information to meet some of the farm succession challenges. Heart, I need to feel good about the decision. I like it. I feel like we have a good plan. I can start to give up control on the farm operation to the next manager. And the gut issues, it's really about trusting others. Can I trust those others around me? I like the plan. Can I trust the people that my son and my daughters have married? Can I trust them with the future of the farm? So identifying where that resistance comes from. Now, as we talk about crucial conversations for the future, and some of the pointers that we talk about with farm families is, number one, you're responsible for your own actions and reactions. We cannot control others. As much as we would love to control others, we just can't. So first, start with yourself, about being able to be responsible for your own actions, reactions, and how you react. And as I reflect, do self-reflection on there are situations that I reacted completely wrong. The key here, right, is that I learn from those. When you think about farm succession and estate planning, what are the boundaries? What are some conversations that I can ask about the future? And then as you get into these heightened situations, be thinking about things that I want to achieve and how can I avoid others? In other words, I wonder how I can achieve blank and avoid blank. So maybe it could be, I wonder how I can have a conversation with mom and dad about what happens to the future of the farm, and I can avoid dad getting mad and mom not talking to me for 2 weeks. So if you can combine those two sentences, as you're going into every crucial conversation, I wonder how I can achieve this. Again, it comes back to your motive. And then how can I avoid getting out of that pool of shared meaning? And then be prepared for the worst case scenario. And a lot of times, I think the things that we think about that could go wrong, they never happen. So what is the worst case scenario? If the worst case scenario, and I want to be on the farm, and mom and dad says, we're going to split up this farm between all of the 7 kids, and you're going to have to buy out your brothers and sisters. If that's the case, if you know it, then what you can control is how you react to that and the plans that you make in your business plan going forward. So some of the things that we would recommend for folks to do, identify those communication barriers that exist in your farm and family business. I would challenge the people that you work with to identify the communication barriers, identify the stressors, and then have some thoughtful discussions, or what are some of the most crucial conversations that I would like to have our family have. And there's a worksheet. You can see an example. That's a worksheet that we use in some of our trainings up here with farm families, about getting them to identify the communication barriers, the stressors, and some of the conversations. And then I think we need to be really thoughtful about knowing and identifying what are the other elephants in the room. Are we able to identify the things that are really impacting us, these elephants in the room? Because bottom line, when we go in to do our estate plan with our attorneys, they need to know the things that are keeping us up at night about the future. It could be simply, I go back to the example, I don't trust my son-in-law or my daughter-in-law with the future. So you express those to your attorney, and then your attorney, there's risk mitigation tools that they can use to help you overcome a lot of the elephants in the room. And then to mention, I know many of our farm populations, they've been in FFA in high school in agriculture education. They've enrolled in ag. They're members of the 4-H community. And one of the best things that they teach us in those programs is how to run a family business meeting. How come we don't do those business meetings as a family business, as a family farm? We run a FFA meeting, a 4-H meeting, just amazing. But then it seems like at the age of 18, we graduate from high school, we get out of both those organizations, and we forget how to incorporate those business meetings. And that's why they teach us about how to run a meeting, so that we can use those things that we learn with parliamentary procedure, how we learn about committee work, how we learn about giving financial reports and going back and revisiting minutes from old meetings. All those things are helping to set us up for success in our family businesses, if we choose to use those. So I would encourage that. Plus, one of those things is, can I do the things personally that set me up to help learn? Here's just some of my picks of the books. If I were to read The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman, Dealing with the Elephant in the Room by Dr. Mike Bechtel, Men Are Like Waffles, Women Are Like Spaghetti. That is an amazing book. And then my book pick of the year is It's Better to Bite Your Tongue Than to Eat Your Words by Dr. Mike Bechtel. And then there's just some things in your references, and the slide deck will be available to you. You can check out some of those resources that we have. And the last thing that I would leave for you is just for all of us to think about is the finality of what we need to think about is, how would your communication change if you were diagnosed with a cancer that has no cure? How would your communication to your farm, family, and yourself, how would your communication change? And I'll just leave you with that question. How would your communication change? And with that, I appreciate you having me here today. I know there was a couple things that maybe popped up in the chat, and if not, I will. Here's my information as far as if you need to. I like that, Steve. When a guy from Ohio says a conversation goes south, does that mean they bring the argument to Kentucky? So that is amazing. Yes, I love that. I thought about that when I said it. I said, when the conversation goes south, I said, well, what's south of us? It's Kentucky. So I guess you would have to say that it goes to Tennessee, right?
Yeah, something like that. So yeah, guys, if you have anything, if you want to raise your hand, we can open a mic if you'd like to do that. We've got a couple of minutes here. Obviously, this is going to be recorded, so you can go back and take a look at that. Brett has let you know that. And we've got the evaluation available, so please do that. David, one of the things that you were talking that really strikes me, I'll turn it back on here so I can see my smiling face. There we go. I teach an HR course and spend a good bit of time talking about psychological safety in the workplace, which essentially means, can your employees ask you any questions? Or if something breaks, are you going to scream and yell and chew their head off? I think when you're talking about the fear, how do families, sometimes we do psychological safety very poorly. How do we do it better?
Yeah, and that's, in our world, right? We have parameters in place with HR and our functions and our processes to have those in place, where in a family, I think sometimes we'll say, well, your family, so your family, so I can scream at you. I cannot talk to you for a week. And those are because in a family business, right? Who sets the rules in a family business? It's the family, right? So this, I believe, has to come from the senior generation. Those that I've seen that are the most successful is that the senior generation sets the tone for those conversations. Now, as professionals, extension professionals, what can we do? We're there to prime the pump, right? We're there to stir the pot. We're the ones that are there to push them to think. Sometimes when I speak to some of our financial professionals and I said, don't let something go in one ear and out the other. Use your chance when you hear conversations that might not be good, like you're talking about, Steve, that you come back with, in a gentle way, push them to say, have you thought about doing it a better way? Because we are probably, as humans, we are the most critical and the hardest on those that are around us the closest, our family members. And until there's an open to where you can check each other on it, in our family we have the word of the year, and some of the are there trigger words that just need to be like, when you hear this trigger word, that you know that someone feels like you just stepped over that line into the safety zone. And when you're in the safety zone, then that's kind of in our family, you have a couple key words that are said, and no, I need to, from my wife's word is, all I have to say is gentle. Gentle. And she knows that maybe, and that's just kind of because of just our conversations. If I say the word gentle, that means maybe she has gone to that gray part of the circle. And the same would hold true for me. That's a similar term for both of us, because we tend to maybe be too brutally honest at times. So.
Well, David, thank you so much. Sometimes I feel like we just scratched the surface on this, because this is a big elephant in the room.
Yep.
I keep working on how to find conversation starters. I like what you say about the responsibility of the older generation to start that. So I know we agree and sing from the same songbook on a lot of things, and
Yep.
Nicole as well. So thank you for this. This is just, I think, some wonderful things for us to think about, and how to deal with some of the more troublesome parts of this whole notion of farm succession, because it is an area that's fraught with peril. So David, thank you so very much. I
Appreciate
look
it.
forward, always have enjoyed working with you. Look forward
We love
to
our friend, or we love our family in Kentucky, right? We love our partners.
well, yes, we've worked together well in the past, and I look forward to doing that again in the future. Thank you so very, very much for
My pleasure.
sharing some time with us today. So folks, as we wrap up here, we're at 1 o'clock. We've been at this an hour. So remind you that our next session in this professional development series will be, it's on the screen. Thank you. March the 3rd with Kevin Ferguson. And then March 24th, Dave Cole, and then April the 14th. So I think this is a good opportunity to bring some resources that are a little new and different to most of us. So certainly thank you for your participation. Before I sign off, Brett or Nicole, do either of you have anything that you need to say or announce or do?
No, not at all. I just want to echo what a fantastic presentation. Such good information, Dave. Steve and I are both very passionate about communication and helping families communicate, to face some of these fears for procrastination and these conversations and what holds us back. And this was just wonderful. So thank you again for joining our series. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And thanks to you guys for joining in. And I'm sure we'll be talking to a number of our agents as we go down the road. So Brett, did you have anything? We're good? Okay. Well, folks, until March the 3rd, tune back in. Enjoyed having you today. And David, once again, thank you for some really, really good thoughts. Well, okay. See you next.